mentioned as someone who has been there for Jews, for Israel, from the halls of American democracy and unwavering support for Israel, please welcome United States Congressman Michael Lawler. Wow, right? You just heard the testimonies of people who were in there in captivity. Today you marched also with them. We met you in the march, the parade. First of all, a few words about that. Parading, it was a celebration, it was prayer, it was a call, it was a cry, it was unity, it was a lot of things together. How does that all combine?
Well, I think first to hear Keith and Aviva speak, and of course Ronan and Orna, who for me have become like family. It is these past 19 months, we have in many respects lived this journey with them. But you see, obviously, on the one hand, the joy of Keith and Aviva both being released from captivity, and on the other hand, the sorrow and the anguish as we wait for Omer to be released and brought home so that he can be properly buried and that there can be a level of closure. But the reality of this is that over these past 19 months, this has been a grueling experience for so many, especially the families who have had to endure this. And throughout this time, I've met with every single one of the hostage families. And the fact that there are still 58 hostages being held is outrageous.
Does the world understand it? Because it seems that the world doesn't.
Sadly, I don't think so. Frankly. I think, frankly, a lot of people here in America don't fully understand it. They don't understand the fact that Americans were being held in captivity and that we still have 4 being held. Obviously, Don Alexander being released was a joyous moment. And Addie and Yale have been on this journey with Ronan and Orna for 19 months. And we had just met just a few weeks ago in Washington once again. And, I and a number of my colleagues led a letter to the president asking him to once again exert pressure to get the hostages released. And so seeing Idan come home is really obviously warms our heart. But there are still 4 Americans, and so I don't think 50. People understand it.
And that's one of the questions that we're trying to understand in Israel. Is there a shift of the policy or the attitude of the president from the days when he said everyone has to be out by 12 o'clock or hell will break loose to today, where we're not hearing those kind of statements? Are you worried? Does it concern you?
No, I think the president has really forced a lot of what we have seen in terms of the release of hostages. To be honest, I don't know that would have happened on the path that we were going down. And so I think the way the president has approached this has resulted in a lot of positive movement, but there's still a lot more to do. And obviously we're dealing with a lot of challenges, specifically with Iran. And the illicit oil trade with China and Iran, the funding of terror proxies, the funding of their nuclear program, ending their nuclear ambitions is paramount. So there are a lot of moving pieces, but for me, what has remained and what I've been steadfast on is making sure that all of the hostages are released and the deceased hostages are brought home to their families. That we cannot lose sight of that, of the importance of that. It is horrific and barbaric to think that anyone would use a deceased person as a bargaining chip, as leverage. But that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with...
Welcome to Israel's enemies.
It's the reality in the Middle East.
Now regarding the Middle East, how do you see the visit, Trump's visit to the region, and the fact that he did not come to visit Israel? Some in Israel seeing that as an issue of attitude. Maybe he's fed up with Israel, or maybe that's exactly the game he needs to play at this point.
Look, if we want peace and stability in the Middle East, it requires our Arab partners normalizing relations with Israel. It requires our Arab partners to recognize Israel's right to exist and the right of the Jewish people to practice their faith without fear of persecution. And so having stronger relationships with Saudi Arabia, with the UAE is paramount. I think there are real challenges and questions pertaining to Qatar. But the reality is that we have to bring our Arab partners along if we are going to get to a place where there can be true and lasting peace and shared prosperity in the Middle East. And so I think the president's trip was successful. I think it has helped forge a lot of positive motion forward. But there is still a lot of work to do.
Now, you mentioned, just like, by the way, you mentioned Qatar. Do you have a demand even from the president regarding this gift from Qatar, regarding the negotiations with Qatar?
Well, this is something for me from the very beginning with respect to Qatar and Egypt, is that more could have and should have and can be done to exert pressure on them when it comes to the negotiations with the hostages. And I think the Biden administration did not do enough on that front. I think President Trump has made progress, but again, we still have 58 hostages that are being held. And the effort, as it pertains to Qatar, is that Qatar needs to put maximum pressure on Hamas to come to an agreement. And so I think the president is making progress, but there's still a lot of work to do. I'm going to the Middle East this week. I will be going to Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel. And this will be one of the priorities for me, is how we get a final agreement to get the 58 remaining hostages.
You know, one of the concepts behind the Abraham Accords, that was how it was presented, is the fact that there's no concessions from Israel regarding land, regarding, areas in Israel, Judea and Samaria. What will happen, or a Palestinian state? What would happen if the Saudis would say, we'd love to, get them into normalization with Israel, but the price, a Palestinian state, and people in Israel will feel a Palestinian state as a result of October 7th?
Look, I think the reality is, for there to even be a consideration of a two-state solution, so many things would have to happen on the front end, starting with the normalization of relations between Arab states and Israel, and specifically Saudi Arabia. A two-state solution is the end of the equation, not the beginning of it. And I think the reality is, given the dynamics that we have seen, given Iran's funding of terrorism, their continued pursuit of a nuclear weapon, the terror proxies in the region,
Palestinian Authority who pays
the PA
families.
that pays Palestinians to kill Jews, this cannot continue. And so all of that would have to be addressed before you can even get to the discussion of a two-state solution. And from my vantage point, since October 7th, if you look at what has happened and the decimation of Hamas and Hezbollah, the collapse of Assad in Syria, despite everything that has happened, we are in a place, frankly, where there is actually potentially an opportunity for real change in the region. And a weakened Iran, a contained Iran, is paramount to really ending the threats and bringing about peace and stability in the region. So there is still a lot of work ahead of us. And as chair of the Middle East and North Africa subcommittee, these are things I think about daily, and what we need to be doing as a United States government to help facilitate and bring about real change.
U.S. Congressman Michael Lawler, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for your activity.